Welcome back to the Realty Funnels podcast. I'm 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐎, and I'm delighted and honored to have as a guest today Hank Avink, who's one of the top real estate coaches in the country and a longtime member of the real estate industry, and just a handsome man and a really radical guy.
Stop.
Hank, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I always laugh like, hey, could you send that to my mom? And so she put it on the refrigerator. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Well, it's my pleasure. And, we're working closely together on a lot of different projects, and it's long overdue to have you on the podcast. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, what you've been doing.
Perfect. I'll give you this 30-second version. I grew up in a small town, two loving parents, and then I went away and played hockey, won a national championship as a captain of the team. And I got knocked out the first game of the playoffs. And so I accepted the trophy in street clothes. And I had a coach say to me when I was putting a bag over my shoulder, he said, "I guess you didn't need that, did you?" And he didn't mean anything by it. But as a 19-year-old, I couldn't get out of there fast enough. Started buying rental properties the Carlton Cheats way.
No money down.
Yep. And actually, I was on his infomercial. You can see it right behind me on late night TV. And I was a multimillionaire by 22. I had 42 properties, and I was bankrupt by 25. And that's a whole nother story. I had a house of cards, and we all know what happened in 2008. I was on the precursor. I had a commercial loan call due on me. And then, so I got into banking, did a little stint there, met my wife when I was basically at the bottom. We've been married 20 years, which I'm super proud of. It hasn't been easy. I'm on my second marriage, same woman, no divorce. It's just marriage before kids and after kids looks different. And we're working on our third marriage right now because we're going to be empty nesters in the next 7 years. And during that time, we had a kid that had open heart surgery, 6 days old. So when you look, I've been at the highs as far as winning a national championship. I've been a top 3 bold coach for Keller Williams, having 600 flights in 3 years. I've been humbled to my knees having a kid go through open heart surgery. And so my story and journey is a lot of highs and a lot of lows, and yet never just staying like this. I've always been willing to risk a little bit of something when it makes sense. And when you do have those lows, figure out how to pull up by your bootstraps. Is that an okay saying? Sometimes I hear sayings that I used to say, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's race. Like, it was unbelievable, some of the things I used to say. Yet sometimes you just need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and go fix it, or go figure out how to get through it. And so, yeah, that's a little synopsis today. Leave anything out?
That's fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing. That's really candid and frank and open and honest. And what you're saying is so true. There are those of us who are going to lean into the misery of it, or those of us who are going to lean into the solution of it. And you just have to say, all right, this is not a moment I like. This is not a moment I feel good about, but this is a moment I can get through.
So let's speak to that as one of my old mentors brought to me the skill set from 𝐇𝐎𝐈𝐒 to point far. Programming leads to thoughts, thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, action leads to results, and back to programming. And what I realized was all the bad things that have happened in my life, like my son going through open heart surgery, are what actually ends up building to like the victory. So when my son had open heart surgery, I had a lot of listings. I used to say 28, but I realized that I used to I'd exaggerate things, not on purpose or unintentionally. I had a lot of listings. Well, each day I needed to decide, do I go to the hospital or do I go to work, because the bills kept coming in? And it was at that moment I made the decision and drew a line in the sand. I said, at some point when life punches me in the jaw, I'm not going to have to worry about going and earning an income. So when my father-in-law went into hospice, we had more than enough income where I could take a step back from being in the business and working it to helping him transition, where he went from, hospice and ended up dying about over a year ago. But I didn't have to have my family affected when I'm spending a lot of time with him, helping him get everything in order.
It's such an important thing that you're talking about in terms of 𝐇𝐎𝐈𝐒's approach to it, which is actually when Lisa and I had our own real estate brokerage, this was our logo. And it starts with your environment impacts your thoughts impact your feelings impact your actions, and your actions impact your results, which come full circle to impact your environment. And this is true, good or bad. If you're in a good environment or in a bad environment, it's going to have that impact.
Agreed.
And so whether you call it programming, which is part of your environment, obviously we all have to focus on making our home life a great environment, our work environment, the company that we're with, the people we work with, the people who we allow to mentor us. If they're not putting the right thoughts into our heads and we're not feeling the right feelings, we're not going to take the action, we're not going to get the results. It will be a downward death spiral.
Yep.
Or it could be a never-ending upward vortex of positivity, and
that's what we're looking for. To tie back what I was talking about there is, I look at negative events of like, oh gosh, we're going to learn. We're going to be better for going through this. And I don't wish my son going through open heart surgery. Yeah, Kevin, my life looks completely differently because I had a problem big enough to go change, because we were winning it from a real estate standpoint. Yeah, the reality was I was working 18-hour days. Was I really winning? But it wasn't until I couldn't work 18-hour days and I had to get done what I used to take 18 hours to do in 3 hours, because that's what my workday was. What I realized was, by raising my standards, I actually got better results. So if you weren't willing to do what I needed you to do as a client, which was all reasonable, get a pre-home inspection, get your home staged, list it where I want you to list it at. And when people did everything that I needed them to do, they got better results, which then got better referrals. And what I realized was, by raising your standards, oftentimes you can get better results, not only for you, yet for your clients.
Yes.
And that was a game changer for me.
When I was in college, I was asked by a friend if I would be willing to help her older brother, who had become quadriplegic after a sporting accident. He had been an All-American wrestler at William and Mary College, and just absolutely great guy. I lived with him for a couple of years, put him to bed at night, fed him breakfast or fed him dinner, whatever that was. Here was a gentleman who was a quadriplegic. He went back to college after he had recovered. In essence, he was through rehab. He became a CPA. He ran a CPA business, honestly, using a pointer stick with his mouth to type on his keyboard. That changed everything about how I look at everything, because first off, great guy, positive energy, wonderful, uplifting person, also willing to rise above his own situation, pull himself up by his own bootstraps. What an inspiration that is. But then also in my head, I was thinking, okay, if anything were to happen to me, have I built a life that I could still run?
Yep.
And you're just sort of molded by that, tested by fire.
Well, and this is why one of my standards is, so there's different levels of energy. The lowest level is a victim, and then the next level is anger, and then the next level is responsibility. One reason why we're in relationship is we've had some mix-ups. You were late for a call once, which is not you at all. I got excited because I got to see how you're going to show up. You took immediate responsibility. You didn't blame me. You didn't blame something else going on. You're like, dude, I am so sorry. This is not like me. And to me, that was awesome, because what we do is, you can have tests for relationships. And that was a test, because I didn't care that you were late. I cared whether or not you took responsibility. Mm-hmm. And when you took responsibility, we were good. But if you were a victim, that call would have been 30 minutes and we wouldn't have had another call, because I can't run with victims. No.
And, it's a question of having empathy, always thinking the best of other people, and wanting, hey, if something went wrong, I'm going to grant that something came up, and I don't know what came up, but I'm going to grant that they had to deal with a situation. But how do they put themselves out there?
So let's speak to that and why. So I have a lot of systems, and one of them is 50-25-1. A lot of them are tattooed on me, which I know can be a little bit weird. Yet Dunbar's law says you can have 150 relationships. Before I found out about Dunbar's law, the best research I came up with was about 120. So we break that down with 36 A's and 96 B's. And with that, in those key 36, you have your key relationships. I was missing a Kevin in my life, which is like the integrator, if you like rocket fuel, which we're both fans of. So Kevin and I right now, we're dating. And what I mean by that is we're courting each other because we believe that we can run parallel, and it goes back to those systems. So I have systems in place that have gotten me to a certain level. And for example, if I've never had a call with someone and they missed the call, I would reach out and say, hey, I hope everything's okay.
Yes.
And if everything's okay, I remember very specifically, I was at a therapy appointment with my daughter, learning how to play, meaning I need to play therapy because how you interact with a 7-year-old girl is different than how you interact with Kevin. And you don't ask a bunch of questions to a 7-year-old. Long story short, I got out of that therapy and immediately went to the call that they didn't show up for. He goes, hey, I just got busy. No big deal. I'll just reschedule. And I said, no, thank you. And they're like, what? I was like, hey, when someone isn't already in a relationship with me, they don't take responsibility and they just blow it off, I'm going to judge them. Now, no, judging, I think, is something you got to be careful with. Yet you got to judge at certain points so that you have filters. And I might have gotten it wrong there. However, we teach people how to treat us, right? So now the reason I'm getting in relationship with Kevin is my systems have gotten me to a certain point. My brain cannot handle, I can't even tell you what that guy's name is. However, with working with Kevin, guess what I would have had in my CRM? I would have had notes on that with trigger words where I could have said no-show or tagged them as a no-show.
Right.
Because that little system was in place, I could go back, click that in, and now have it there. And I look back from 2016 when I started my coaching business, every hour on the hour, I can tell you what I've done and who I've talked to. Wouldn't it have been nice if I would have taken one step further, had them in the CRM, taken the AI notes or whatever the case may be, took 10 seconds and just did something. Now in 2025, I have a problem big enough to go solve, to go raise my income, because I have a net life income where as long as I make 360 grand a year, I'm not going to screw up my life to go make more. And I've always made way more than that, but it's based on hitting that net life income. We're raising that net life income number to $1 million for different reasons that I won't get into on this call. If I would have taken that one extra step and had that CRM dialed in, how much easier, Kevin, would it be for me to go from 360 as the net life bottom number to $1 million because all that data information was there?
Well, thankfully, the second best day to plant a tree is today.
Yep.
We know it would have been great to have planted that tree back in 2016. We all can find what we should be doing next and decide to take action about it today. Quite candidly, AI tools didn't exist in 2016 like they do today. How exciting is that?
Well, and that's the thing is, you have to be like, things need to work out. And back in 2016, if I would have tried to do my own coaching business in 2012, I wouldn't have been able to, because here's why. They didn't have Zoom at the level that they did. No. Zoom made a huge difference on the client experience being able to do that. We didn't have things like Kajabi or ClickFunnels or Infusionsoft. And I know they're another name now because of that. But my point is sometimes you got to have the right timing of things, because if I would have tried to do my coaching business in 2012, what cost me a couple $1,000 would have cost me a couple $100,000 back then.
Yeah. And it would have had layers of complexity that nowadays just don't exist anymore.
Yep. And here's my goal. As a coach, you should want the people that you're helping be able to catch up with you and pass you. Like that's my goal is I want you to have an easier road. So let's say that Kevin blazed a trail with using Go High Level and Realty Funnels and blazed the trail where I don't have to go in my Jeep on the 2-track. He's got a 5-lane superhighway for me. And I should be able to catch up to Kevin quicker because I don't have to pay all the stupid tax that he's paid. And together, what can happen is he's going to slow down and help bring me up to speed. And then I know what will happen is as I start to pass Kevin, and what I mean by that is I'll be able to bring him up to speed. So that's what we're doing with a parallel ship is we're not in partnership, we're in parallel ship where my goal is to help Kevin. His goal is to help me because when you have two givers, you won't be able to outgive a giver.
Correct. You know, it's so fascinating the way I look at it with all the, I call it venture clienting that I'm doing, where I'm working with small startups and helping them as they're my clients. I'm helping them implement systems and integrations and automations. And like we were talking about with Rocket Fuel, which is part of the whole Traction series of books. I am an integrator. I am also a visionary. You're a visionary who needs an integrator.
Correct. I've been able to white knuckle it, I think is what they call it in the book, where I can do it and like I can force myself. I mean, that's why I got on Ritalin. I remember in 2016, mid 2016, I went to my doctor and I was like, I gotta write some programs and I just can't. He goes, you have ADHD? I was like, do you think? He goes, duh. And again, I'm not pushing drugs here, but for Ritalin for me was a game changer because it allowed me to dial back just enough to not be 100 miles an hour and not redline it. And it's been great for me. But my point behind that is having someone like a Kevin, like an integrator that can help fill those gaps and you can trust and you can do it together. You can go much further running together.
Well, that's the thing for me. The venture client partners that I'm working with also lift me. So I have my rocket fuel. They have their rocket fuel. Now all of a sudden we have two rocket boosters pushing both of us forward.
Yep. And I think that's an important thing to understand is Kevin doesn't have to lose in order for me to win. In fact, I want him to win because the more he wins, and I was just talking with Matt Plummer, one of my old coaching clients who has now become a peer. The cool thing is when he went from coaching client to peer, we had a little bit of a separation, but now we come back in a relationship where he's a little bit further down the path on a few things. And it's like, oh, wow. Do you know how exciting it is for him at the opportunity to be able to help pull me forward? That's like one of the greatest feelings in the world is when the student can become the teacher.
Yes.
And when egos aren't involved, that's one of the greatest things in the world, isn't it?
You know, I love the story of Edison and Ford because Ford worked for Edison before he ever created an automobile. And then he made this prototype of this bicycle, quadricycle with a motor on it. And Edison looked at it and said, oh my goodness, you've got the propulsion system built right in. That's brilliant. Well, then the great inventor encourages this young guy who then becomes this parallel path with him. And they became lifelong friends. They had their winter estates together down in Fort Myers, Florida. They went vagabonding across the country with Harvey Firestone. And, they just had a great time. But it was because their egos were low to the ground because they wanted to support each other.
And I think that's an important piece. And sometimes you got to have that ego or arrogance to go blaze the trail. And there's times where you got to dial it back. I'm in a time right now where I'm going back getting my white belt, which means I'm going to be a student again and be okay with that, which means I'm going to spend 80% of my time to get 20% of the results. And Kevin, I'd like to proclaim this. And even if we're the only ones that ever watch this, it'll be interesting 5 years from now. So here's my goal. 10 years ago, taxes to me were almost a heart attack. And my accountant would call and I'd get that feeling because I just didn't have control. I didn't have confidence. And frankly, they were complicated. Now my accountant calls and there's no energy. Like I can jump in QuickBooks. I know my numbers. I get excited looking at numbers. When it comes to the digital and Realty Funnels, here's my goal in 5 years it's awesome. It's built upon itself. So, and I think one of the challenges that people have that are watching this, they don't have an income problem, they have a cash flow problem, and they're thinking too short term in their game plan. So here's what I'd like to share with people.
How to make $1 million.
So if you're watching this, I have a question for you is, would an extra $1 million help you in retirement? And typically the answer is yes. And obviously there'd have to be some, yet I could use an extra $1 million for retirement, Kevin, but it doesn't matter if it comes in 2025 or if it comes in 2030, because I'm 47 years old. Well, let's look at this. I believe through Realty Funnels, I can create a product at each one of these levels that, let's say, $2,000. I built a coaching business called So You Want to Be a Coach, where every single problem that I had with building my 6-figure, multi-million-dollar coaching business, I have in a SOP, so a big rock, right? Do I think that if we got this dialed in through Realty Funnels, where it was a sequential, hey, do this, do I think I would have paid $2,000 to be able to learn all the lessons that I've learned since 2016 to 2024? Actually, Kevin, I'm realizing during this thing, we need to go build that.
Which we will.
And so here's what it is. Over the next 10 years, if I could help systematize through Realty Funnels, build a program called So You Want to Be a Coach, could I sell 500 of those over the next 10 years?
There's $1 million. There's $1 million. Yeah.
So it might be 10 that I give away in the first year, and then 10 for $200, and then 10 for $2,000. And then it just becomes a math equation, because we built the success code of skill set, time on task, experimentation, till we get some victories and we get some confidence. Well, guess what? At some point, you're no longer experimenting, where you're doing these activities, get these victories, and you get to momentum. And it's just a math equation, and it's no more drama.
So perfect. Thank you for sharing all that. And yes, we will build that. I'm going to hold you accountable to that.
Perfect.
So tell everyone about 50-25-1.
So this came from having a gap, and his name was Humberto, and Humberto was helping with Kajabi. And he goes, we need a deliverable. And I go, okay, tell me more. And he goes, we need some systems. I'm like, tell me more. And he goes, I need some numbers. I'm like, what do you mean numbers? He goes, like something fancy. And I go, what's that? And what we got down to, he goes, how many people do you get in front of every single day? I'm like, my goal is to get in front of 50, because I know if I get in front of 50 people, just like when I circle prospected, I knew if I made 100 dials, 20 people would answer. I knew if I got in front of 50 people, I could get them off neutral. So they'd either like me or hate me, but they're going to judge me, so they're at least not neutral. Me wearing my hat backwards, people are like, who's this guy? But at least they remember me. Now, the 20 is the energy exchange. And in Bold, a great course by Keller Williams that I used to coach, they said 20 contacts a day. Well, one thing I didn't like about those 20 contacts in their version was, hey, Kevin, do you know anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate?
It's not about relationships.
It's not, but it worked. So what I realized was, of the 20 people that I had that conversation with, or a conversation, 5 of those needed follow-up, meaning they were somebody I liked. They were somebody that I was able to upgrade. And in 2016, back then, all I had to do was get them on Facebook. If you guys haven't noticed, the Facebook algorithms are different than 2016. In 2016, Facebook was super relevant for doing a human base. Now, when I get the 5, it's 5 conversations where now how do I follow up with them? So rather than just going to Facebook, what got us here won't get us there. Now I go into Go High Level, or into Realty Funnels. Sorry. I go in there, I punch in the contact name, and then what I do is I get the next piece of information. So my goal is to have one powerful conversation where we can remember where we were when we had the conversation. And if you think of September 11th, we all remember when the assassination attempt on one of our past presidents. You know, we all remember where we were when we heard that, whether you like them or not like them. At the end of the day, you remember it. Yeah. My goal is to have such an impactful conversation with someone that a year from now, we can remember where we were. Kevin, you and I had a conversation where we talked about this. What's this mean?
Yeah. So that's when if Hank turns his hat around while I'm talking with him, I'm becoming too geeky.
He's coming too geeky. And The reality is with real conversations, you got to be willing to say, hey, Kevin, sometimes you just start going, wah, 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 and you're losing me. So because Kevin is a relationship I care about, I was willing to be vulnerable and say that rather than trying to figure out how I can, strangle him. And Kevin can probably remember where he was when we had that conversation.
I was sitting right here.
And by doing that, the reality is we can look back and joke upon that, but we were leaning into that and being willing to have uncomfortable conversations so that we can impact each other. And here's the math behind it. You're willing to lean in situations like that 365 times a year. Kevin, how many people do you know? 100 people, 1,000 people?
So we get into that math, how many people do I know well? How many people do I have serious relationships with? Who are my inner circle? Who are the vortex in my life who make things happen? But the reality of it is, none of us can have too many incredibly close. It's hard. You can only have so many that are meaningful relationships, and that might tap out at 150.
Well, let's look at this. For the sake of the math, let's just say it's 100 that you would have influence over.
Mm-hmm.
So 365 times 100 is 36,500. I would rather get a referral than a lead. So my goal is to go impact one human being a day where they would go out of their way to give me a headlock referral, because you going to Monica and saying, hey, you need to talk with Hank, and Monica Weekly's a favorite for us.
Yes.
You know what Monica said about you?
Tell me.
And one of the reasons we're having on the call, because I have a standard. I don't run or give social currency to someone that I haven't been around the sun with.
Right.
Monica, who I've been around the sun with a bunch, and she knows my standard. She goes, Hank, Kevin is one of the kindest human beings you'll ever meet.
That's very
He will
sweet.
go above and beyond to do what he needs to do to his detriment. You can trust him. Now, when Monica says that, that's much more powerful than me getting a lead and me trying to figure you out. The fact that Monica, who I have years and hours, hundreds, if not thousands of hours with, in credibility, when she says that, I just automatically take you at that.
That's the power.
It's power. So I got 36,500 people that I have the ability to get the referrals from with that sort of entrance into me. And what I think people need to understand is when you change your life and instead of going for leads, you go for referrals, which means you're serving the person that God puts in front of you, knowing that if you serve them, a giver will want to return the favor. And it's not a condition. There's a difference there. But if they have the opportunity, they're going to go out of their way to give you a referral. And I'd much rather deal with referrals than leads.
Lisa and I were very thankful to create a great and valuable friendship with a couple in St. Petersburg, Florida. We met them at an estate sale. They handled estate sales for attorneys and for families. And we met them at one of their estate sales in Treasure Island, Florida. We bought a beautiful teak dining room table and chairs, and then they were kind enough to offer to bring it over. And then when they did, we said, well, can we get you a water? And then we just started talking with them. And they ended up sending us probably about $120,000 a year in referral income.
Because you're being human.
And we built a valuable relationship that was mutually beneficial.
Yep.
And we took great care of them. We took great care of anyone they sent to us. We kept them informed of how things were going with the people that they sent to us. We never embarrassed them. So they always felt confident recommending us. And we had so many listing appointments where the people said, Martha just told me I had to list with you.
That's a headlock referral.
It was a headlock referral. And we had people who said, well, we were about to list with so-and-so, but we talked to Martha and Tommy, and they said, you need to stop what you're doing, pick up the phone, call Kevin and Lisa. And we got so much of that business from them, but we earned it by relationship. We earned it by honoring the relationship. And then we earned it by performing and fulfilling at a super high level every step of the way.
So Kevin, this is where I want to jump in. I have fought a CRM and a database because I wanted exactly what you just talked about, which was the human base. Yet here's where I need to look at things differently. And I believe that we should all be willing to look at things differently as different perspectives change. My goal for the relationship with Kevin is where we can take everything that he just talked about on a human base, have a CRM and a database where it makes the human base of the database that much more effective because things aren't slipping through the cracks because you're limited as to what you can do where that can support it.
You run out of bandwidth.
Yep.
You run out of hours of the day. There are so many opportunities for a real estate agent to go out and list a home this week. The challenge for most real estate agents is that they met those people 7 months ago and never kept up with them.
Because they're so busy that they have enough deals coming in that they can't nurture and follow them up. And this is where Kevin comes in. If every single Zoom call that I did for free, I had in a system where it was nurturing and we were staying in front of them, not by a drip campaign that says, hey, move your clocks forward. Hey, it's 2025. That does it automatically on the phone, buddy. And that's where our goal or my goal with Kevin is how do we take the human base with the CRM, mash it together where now it's multiplication and much more because there's limits to the way I was doing it.
And that's what we're building inside Realty Funnels. And it's really the crux of any successful real estate agent business is building a real business, one that is reliable, efficient, attractive, and lucrative. And the challenge for most real estate agents in terms of efficiency is they have no efficiency systems. And what you do with a CRM, with a database like Realty Funnels, is you are nurturing people along the journey with valuable information, with resources, with your willingness to be available to help until those people identify themselves and say, hey, Hank, you've sent me a lot of good information. We're now ready to talk with you.
Yep.
And then what happens is naturally you get into relationships with people who say, I know, like, and trust Hank. I want to work with Hank now. And those people would otherwise have been dropped for lack of systems. And now they get to self-identify as somebody who values you.
Yep.
And then you get to be in relationship with that person, perform for them, help them through that chapter of their lives where they're buying or selling a home. If you're a real estate coach, if you're in prop tech, whatever that situation is, you are identifying the people that then become part of your 150 people who are really important to you. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Connectwithhank.com is the easiest way. And then watch, you can follow me or message me on Facebook. That's a great way too. No, if you've watched this long, do yourself a favor, lean into the relationship with Realty Funnels and Kevin. This isn't a sales pitch. You can't pay me enough money to promote something that I don't believe in. And I believe in Kevin and Realty Funnels at a level right now where I'm starting to lean in at the next level and excited to see where it goes.
I'm excited too. Hank, thank you so much. Delighted to have you on and just thankful for the relationship that we're growing as well.
Me too. My pleasure.